ever get this feeling? Like, reality is kind of glitching. Like, there's
Yeah.
a deeper code running underneath it all.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, that's basically Christopher Michael Langan's CTMU in a nutshell. We're diving deep into that today. Cognitive Theoretic Model of the Universe. Catchy, right?
Definitely rolls off the tongue.
But don't worry, this isn't some physics lecture where you need a PhD to follow along. This is for anyone who's ever looked up at the stars and thought, what is all this? Because CTMU, it tries to answer that. And not just with physics, but with, like, language, information, even consciousness itself. Wild stuff.
It really is ambitious. You know how physicists are always chasing that theory of everything?
Right, the grand unifying theory.
Exactly.
Yeah.
CTMU wants to be that, but Langan throws a curveball. He says, to really get the universe, we got to get the mind first, because they might be one and the same.
Okay, yeah, my brain's already doing some stretches over here. So before we go full-blown matrix, can you set the stage? What's the core problem that CTMU is even trying to solve?
All right, imagine this. You've got physics, right? Explains the Big Bang, black holes, all that cosmic stuff. Then you've got biology, figuring out DNA, evolution, how life works. But then there's you, right now, experiencing it all, thinking, feeling, traditional science. It doesn't quite connect those dots, does it?
Like trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing.
Exactly. And CTMU swoops in. It's not saying those other pieces are wrong. It's saying, hold on, I think we can fit those into a bigger picture.
So if the scientific models are like the rules of a video game, CTMU wants to understand the code itself.
You got it. What makes the whole thing run?
Big questions, and CTMU tackles them head on. But before we go there, give us a roadmap. Any key CTMU lingo we should watch out for?
Oh, yeah, definitely. First up, SCSPL stands for Self-Configuring Self-Processing Language.
So reality is what? A giant self-writing essay.
Think of it like this. The universe isn't just something, it's always becoming, writing its own story with information itself, always changing, rearranging, getting more complex.
And this SCSPL has its own grammar, its own rules.
Exactly, and that leads to syntophonesis. This one's a mouthful, I know. But it's basically saying that everything, even if it seems separate, is ultimately connected.
Wait, how can things be different A and D the same? That's kind of messing with my head.
You can't have one without the other. Think about it. To tell two things apart, they got to share some background, right? Like, try describing the color blue without mentioning any other color. Syntophonesis says that's built into reality.
So we're all part of this giant dot cosmic tapestry.
Yeah, and it's not static either. It's always evolving, driven by this inherent purpose.
Yeah.
And that brings us to teleology.
Oh, right, purpose. Like the universe has a to-do list it's working through.
Kind of. It's the idea that there's a goal-directedness built in, a drive towards complexity, towards self-organization.
Okay, so we've got reality as a self-writing language, everything connected through the syntophonesis thing, and a purpose driving it all. CTMU is not messing around.
Definitely not. And we're just getting started.
Okay, so reality is this self-evolving language, this SCSPL, always writing its own story. But where do WE fit in all of this? Like, what about US?
Well, this is where CTMU gets really out there. It's this idea that mind equals reality, MAR they call it.
Hold on. Mind equals reality. Like, if I'm really craving a giant pizza right now,
It magically appears.
hey, a guy can dream, right? But seriously, what does that even mean?
Okay, not quite like that, although quantum mechanics does get weird about observation, but that's a whole other deep dive. What MAR is getting at is the mind isn't just passively watching reality separate from everything else. It's actually part of it, shaping it, being shaped by it.
Okay, so it's like our minds are reading the universe's language, but also adding our own sentences as we go.
Exactly. And this throws that whole mind-body dualism thing right out the window. You know, that philosophy stuff about mind and matter being totally different. CTMU says, nope, same coin, two sides.
All right, I'm listening, but then is the universe, like, conscious? Does it think the way WE think?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And it sparked a lot of debate. CTMU isn't saying the universe is thinking about pizza or taxes or whatever's on our minds.
So what's this universal mind like, then? If it's not pondering its grocery list, what's it doing?
Remember syntophonesis?
Yeah.
That interconnectedness we talked about.
Everything being linked.
Yeah. CTMU applies that to consciousness, too.
So, like, our minds are linked up somehow. Is that what you're saying?
Think of it like a giant network. Information flowing, evolving, getting more complex. Our minds, they're like little points of awareness within that network. Each one with its own view of the whole thing.
Okay, I think I'm kind of sort of following this mind equals reality thing, but then there's that whole universe is thinking in Venn diagrams thing. How does
Ah,
that fit in?
yes, the multiplex unity principle, MU. Venn diagrams sound kind of funny for describing the universe, I'll admit.
Just a tad.
But they're actually perfect for visualizing this. Think about it. Those overlapping circles show how sets relate to each other,
Right.
right? Well, MU says reality is structured kind of like that. But instead of sets of numbers, it's levels of existence.
Like those Russian nesting dolls. Each one's complete, but part of a bigger one.
Exactly. Every level, from tiny atoms to the whole vast cosmos, it's both a thing itself and part of this bigger system. It's both at the same time.
So MU is saying the universe is this multi-layered, interconnected reality, like a cosmic layer cake.
With extra dimensions and a side of quantum weirdness. And here's the kicker. It's not static. It's dynamic, always changing, information flowing between levels, influencing everything else.
My brain needs a nap after this. Okay, so we've got reality as this self-writing language, mind is reality, and the universe is a giant multi-level Venn diagram. How on earth does CTMU apply all this to quantum mechanics? Isn't that already mind-blowing enough on its own?
That's the thing about CTMU. It doesn't shy away from the really big questions.
Mm-hmm.
And to see how it tackles quantum mechanics, we need to rethink what quantum mechanics even is. Because CTMU isn't just trying to interpret it, it's trying to explain the whole framework behind it.
So we're not just talking about particles and waves, but like the source code of reality itself. It's like we've been stuck watching the movie on a tiny, grainy screen, and CTMU is giving us the IMAX experience, right?
Exactly. CTMU doesn't just want to interpret the weird stuff, like superposition or entanglement. It wants to find the root directory of the operating system that generates this quantum weirdness in the first place.
And that's where metamechanics comes in, right?
Metamechanics, that's the ticket.
Honestly, it sounds a little intimidating.
Think of it this way. Imagine exploring a jungle, totally uncharted. Most people would focus on the terrain, the plants, the animals. That's kind of like regular quantum mechanics, right? Observing, describing the strange stuff.
Okay, so I've got my compass, my pith helmet, hacking through the quantum undergrowth.
CTMU with metamechanics. That's like having a helicopter. Suddenly you see the whole jungle from above.
Yeah.
You're not just mapping trees, you're understanding the entire ecosystem, the connections, the patterns.
So instead of getting lost in the weeds of individual particles, metamechanics is about the bigger picture of how it all works, the framework.
Precisely. And one of the biggest examples is how CTMU handles the expansion of the universe.
Oh, yeah, that whole thing where it's speeding up, freaky.
Right. Cosmologists have been scratching their heads for decades. Dark energy, all sorts of theories.
Yeah.
But it's still a mystery.
So how does CTMU approach it? Give me the lowdown.
Okay, get ready for this. CTMU suggests the universe isn't expanding the way we usually think. It's more like a perspective flip, a cosmic switcheroo.
Okay, now you're just messing with me. Perspective flip. How so?
Imagine the universe is like a balloon. Everything's stuck to the surface, right? Now, instead of the balloon expanding outwards, picture the surface shrinking inwards.
Wait, shrinking. Like everything is getting smaller. My coffee cup, the planets, everything.
Not shrinking in the way you're thinking. Remember, we're talking about space-time itself. It's like changing the scale on a map. The distances stay the same, but the overall size changes.
All right. I'm trying to picture this. But wouldn't we notice if everything was getting smaller?
That's the thing. We're part of the shrinking fabric, so we wouldn't see it directly. It's all relative. From our view, everything else looks like it's moving away, which is what we call expansion.
Whoa. So it's like that optical illusion where the image flips depending on how you look at it. The universe isn't expanding out, it's shrinking in, but we just perceive it differently.
You got it. Langen calls it conspansion. Inward contraction and outward expansion happening at the same time. Mind-bending stuff, I know.
Mind-bending is an understatement. But does it actually explain anything? Or is this just some wild theoretical idea?
It actually solves a bunch of problems in cosmology. Remember that accelerating expansion thing? Conspansion explains that. See, as the universe contracts inwards in this conspansive way, the information content actually increases, like compressing a file on your computer.
So the universe is shrinking, but also getting more complex, more information dense.
Bingo. And that increase in complexity creates an outward pressure, which we observe as accelerating expansion, like a cosmic balancing act.
Okay, I think I'm starting to wrap my head around conspansion. So if this universe is a self-writing language, evolving, becoming more complex, is there a point to it all? Does it have a purpose?
You're hitting on the big one now. This is where we get to CTMU's most profound and maybe controversial idea, Teleological recursion.
Teleological recursion. Yeah, I'm going to need a bit of help unpacking that one. Sounds like it involves destiny and maybe some cosmic, purpose-driven life coach.
Well, not quite a life coach, but purpose is key. Remember, teleology means inherent purpose, goal-directedness, and recursion, in this sense, means processes folding back on themselves, a feedback loop.
Okay, I'm with you so far. So how does this teleological recursion work in CTMU? What's the purpose and what's doing the looping?
Picture the universe like a self-learning program. It's constantly processing, evolving, getting more complex. Here's the kicker, though. CTMU says that WE, as conscious observers, aren't just along for the ride.
We're not. So we're actually part of the program, like editing the code as we go.
That's the idea. Our thoughts, choices, even our observations, they all feed back into the system, influencing how the universe evolves. We're not just players in the game. We're helping to write the rules as we play.
Whoa. Talk about pressure. So our choices matter on a cosmic scale.
That's the implication. Gives a whole new meaning to free will, right? In CTMU, we're not just passengers. We're co-creators, shaping the universe alongside everything else.
Wow. I don't know if my brain can handle much more of this, but in the best way possible. So where do we even go from here? What does it all mean for consciousness, for our purpose, for, well, everything?
That's the beauty of CTMU. It asks more questions than it answers, which honestly is what any good theory should do. It forces us to rethink everything we thought we knew about ourselves, about the universe.
It really does. I mean, we've only just skimmed the surface today. We talked about reality as this self-writing code, mind equaling reality, conspansion, teleological recursion. It's like stepping into a funhouse mirror where everything's familiar but also completely warped.
It definitely makes you question your assumptions, and that's a good thing. It reminds us that the universe is way stranger, way more amazing than we give it credit for.
Absolutely. If you're feeling even a fraction as mind-blown as I am right now, do yourself a favor. Check out the source material. Dive into Langan's work. Explore this CTMU rabbit hole online. See where it takes you.
You might just surprise yourself with the questions you start asking.
Couldn't have said it better myself. That's it for today's deep dive into CTMU. Keep those minds open, keep those questions coming, and as always, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.